Are you able to see my screen? Yes. Okay, good. Well, I want to start here with a few opening comments, and then briefly demonstrate ChatGPT, and then have some of my reflections on that. And then we'll open up the floor for people to share questions or thoughts or reflections or strategies that you have been thinking about how to respond to ChatGPT. And so the larger issue is that about artificial intelligence. But this particular instance that we're talking about today is about the application of ChatGPT. ChatGPT debuted only in November, so it's only been around for a very short amount of time. But how interesting to see, excuse me, how interesting to see that 3/4 of you were aware of it before we even sent out the email about it. It has certainly taken the academic world by storm in terms of the number of articles that have been on the Chronicle of Higher Education, Inside Higher Ed, other forums showing the influence. There's a certain level of perceived threat that academia is facing right now. And so there's been a number of responses that people have given to this. One is to ignore the threat, thinking, oh, how is it any different than other ways of plagiarizing materials? I'm not sure that that's a good strategy. Some have said we need to fight this and develop counter apps to prevent students from using ChatGPT. But that might be possible in the near term. But in the long term, that's a losing battle that will never be able to stay ahead of the curve. That leaves us with a couple of other responses to either adapt our pedagogy so that we teach in a way that students can't use ChatGPT to cheat, and we'll talk a little bit more about those a little later. And then finally, the option of embracing it and saying, how can we embrace AI, whether it's ChatGPT or another such platform that arises, and we know that it will come out in the very near future. So I want to look at ChatGPT for just a moment. And I found it very interesting that when I created my account in ChatGPT, and I suppose many of you have done so as well, but I just thought it ironic that ChatGPT was asking if I was a robot. It's a robot itself. So what does it care if I'm a robot? But somehow it is asking and doesn't think that I should be a robot to use a robot. A little bit of irony there. In ChatGPT, basically it is a search engine, not a search engine. It's a bot where you can type in a query at the bottom of the screen, and it will give you a response. And so here's some examples that ChatGPT suggests. Explain quantum computing in simple terms. What it does is it will then generate an answer. And it's not like Google, which finds a website that already has thought of this question and has answered it. It is responding to novel questions or novel prompts and creating new content to respond to that. So it's not exactly new, of course. It is aggregating responses that it's finding across the web to develop a new response. So it does mention very clearly that there are limitations to the function of ChatGPT. It can occasionally generate incorrect information. Oh, so for example, I searched on who is Jonathan Addleton, and it said some correct things, but it said a lot of incorrect things about Jonathan. And so that is one of the limitations, is that it generate incorrect information. May occasionally produce harmful instructions or biased content. and it's limited to information that's available on the web. And so the newest information is not going to be on there because it's not yet available, or it's not available in large quantities. So let me, at this point, with no further ado, see if we can demonstrate ChatGPT. And I'm wondering, I've switched away from my PowerPoint. Do you see now, welcome to ChatGPT? Okay, thank you.
Yes, we do.
So we'll see if it's working. There's tremendous demand for ChatGPT. And so some of you have already experienced this yourself, where you've tried to log into ChatGPT and it's been overwhelmed with responses or a demand for it. And so the application itself is not available. And yeah, there we go. No, that's not what I want. So at the very bottom of the screen there, you see the prompt, and you can type in anything. So I'm writing, so you write an essay with 5 APA citations on short-term memory and dementia. And so the question for us is, how well will it do in creating such a prompt? I mean, responding to something like this. And so we see it just on the screen. It's actually writing a paper faster than you and I could do it. And so the threat to academia, of course, is if this was a take-home assignment that we gave to students to write such an essay, we might have it longer. We might have more citations in it. I've just done it with 5 citations for the purpose of time so that it can write it right in front of us. But if a student turned in such an assignment, we would be like, yeah, no, it's well organized, firstly, secondly, thirdly. It has some citations there, it's giving examples, it's defining. And what it's doing is it's aggregating this across then the web in terms of things that are available. And the AI engine then is actually writing the paper. And all of you are thinking, my goodness, this would have made my education so much easier if this had been available when I was a student. But I think that we can also all see very quickly the potential problem that this poses to us in academia for what we do, what sort of assignments we use with students. Now, it's creating the assignment as we are watching it, so I'm not reading it to see how accurate it is, but just as I scan it, it seems to be reasonable response. What's interesting to me is that whenever it gets to the references, it cuts off at about 2 or 3 references. So whether I ask for 5 or 10, it doesn't give me the whole list of references. So I guess that does require the students to at least write the reference section. But it started the references right there in front of us. Okay. So let me switch back to the presentation. There we go. So just to summarize some of the issues that we have before us with ChatGPT, and the number one issue for us is using this for cheating, that if students were asked about to do this as an at-home assignment, or even if they're sitting in the classroom with a laptop, they could use the AI to actually write the paper that we have assigned to them. Some other potential problems are inaccuracies. And so students might write something using ChatGPT and think that something is true when it's actually not true. I mentioned the one about Dr. Addleton. It listed all kinds of places that he had worked that weren't true. And I showed it to him, and he knew it was friends of his that were mentioned in the same journal articles as, the same news briefings. But ChatGPT wasn't sophisticated enough to know that it wasn't him, but it was his colleagues. Biases, inoffensive content, that's possible. They have some screens within ChatGPT to prevent biased contributions, but that's not foolproof. For academia, if we use ChatGPT, or a student uses ChatGPT, should we cite it as one of the authors? There's been some controversy. Some journals have said that it is not allowed to be used as one of the authors, and there's been other perspectives on this. Again, we see that there's some ambiguity in terms of, for our students, unless we tell them where it is appropriate to use or where it's not appropriate to use, it puts them into an ambiguous situation. Is it permissible or forbidden for student use? There's decisions locally as individual faculty that need to be decided. As an institution, we'll be having larger institution-wide conversations about the use of generative AI bots. The crux of the issue, as I see it, is this. And I've done quite a bit of reading on this, and this is really the most important issue for me, is what is the function of writing? What is the function of writing? Now, you might say, of course, it's to communicate. And I think really that is the core of it, of course. But we often have co-opted in academia writing as a way of assessing student learning. So we want to know what's in the student's brain, what sort of learning outcomes that they have, that they've been able to gather in our courses. And so what do? We can't look inside the brain, so we have them write it out to us. And in that writing process, we say, okay, this is an indication of what they have learned. And then, so it's really the question of the second use of it. Is this obsolete for us now? Can we no longer use writing assignments to be able to tap into what students have gained cognitively? Well, any type of outcome. Usually we have them write, and it gives an indication. This is, of course, frustrating for students because sometimes they will say to us, well, the information is already out there. Why am I having to put it in my own words? It's already been communicated. And really what they're saying is option A, it's already been communicated. Why am I communicating something that's already been communicated? And we as professors are saying, no, I actually don't want you to communicate with me. I want you to tell me what you know so that I can assess your learning. And so the shift, I think, in academia is going to be shifting away from using writing as a way to gauge student learning and toward authentic communication. So some of the strategies that I have seen mentioned to prevent cheating some of them are very doable to implement right away. Some of them aren't necessarily practical. So one strategy is to use in-person handwritten work. And so for certain types of tests and assessments, this could be an appropriate strategy. But we certainly can't do this for a senior thesis or for an MPhil thesis or a dissertation. Certainly we can't have the student sitting there writing it right in front of us. We used a lot of vivas and oral exams during COVID. So we have lots of skills in that to verify that the work has actually been done by the student. And so that's an option as well, that if they've written a paper, then have them, without looking at the paper, describe what's in the paper and see if they actually have written it themselves. The drawback to that, of course, is if the student is savvy enough, they will write the paper with ChatGPT and then read it over many times and memorize the content so that when the viva comes, they're ready to tell you what ChatGPT produced in the paper. Another option is to create new assignments that can't be done by a ChatGPT or another AI. And I'll show you one of those in just on the next slide. Using other sorts of assessments, videos, debates, games, interviews. These could be things that you can't just go to ChatGPT and generate. Asking students to reflect and journal on their own learning process. I haven't tried this, but it seems like that would be something that is not conducive to ChatGPT. My tip that I would encourage all of you to do is run the assignment that you're going to give to the student through ChatGPT first. See what it can do. If you're going to ask them to do a short essay, run it through ChatGPT so you know what sort of answers that can be done by ChatGPT. And if it is easy for students to go home, run through ChatGPT and generate a response, then I would encourage you to rethink that assignment because it could be easily cheated. And students are intelligent. That's one of my core convictions is students are very intelligent. And so they know about these tools. And intelligent students, I'm not saying it's a good strategy, I'm not saying it's the right strategy, but they figure out how to work around assignments. So here's a good example by Dr. Itisham that he was sharing with me. This is for public health and nutrition course, and he created a game to raise community awareness regarding diseases. And so it's a snakes and ladder and dice game where it integrates into the game tons of information that have been taught in the class. So for example, if somebody does not breastfeed the baby, that's not good for public health. That's not good for the baby, of course, because breastfeeding is so beneficial for so many ways. So they would hit the snake and have to go way back. All the sort of content that's taught in the class then can be integrated into a game like this. And I think we can all see very quickly that this is not something that you could have ChatGPT generate. But I think it's a great, clever way. The calculator. When the calculator came along, some people have made analogies to the calculator. When the calculator came along, there was a lot of hand-wringing in academia about how we're going to teach students to do math if they can just use the calculator to do that. When I was a student and I took the SAT, we could not use the calculator on it because they wanted to see if we could actually do the calculations. But at some point, academia, and including those administering the SAT, said, well, let's embrace the calculator because students actually use calculators in class and in real life. And so they've actually had students bring calculators to tests to see how they can use the calculator. And in fact, when I was in graduate school, my professor asked us, first day, our stats professor, the first thing he did was ask us to buy a good stats calculator. Not this one, this is a little bit old, the picture I have here. But so the question then becomes, are these AI technologies going to be like that? That we actually want to teach students how to use them effectively in the class? In the same way that students use spell checker when they're writing a paper. And we don't say, well, we want you to learn how to spell, so you're not allowed to use the spell checker. We use them, it's just assumed that it's built into a word processor, spell checker, grammar checker. And the focus then becomes not on spelling and grammar, where it used to be, that used to be an important part of writing, but it's now on the actual content of the paper. So some positive strategies would be to teach students how to responsibly use ChatGPT and effectively use it. Another one might be to actually embed ChatGPT into an assignment. Maybe having ChatGPT write the first draft of a paper and then have students edit it thereafter. This is all right on the cutting edge of how academia is going to respond to it. These are some of the ideas that have been bandied around, and there's many others. The common thread on these positive coping strategies is to use AI to facilitate learning, not just to produce content. Because producing content, AI can do that pretty well. But we want to actually facilitate the learning in the student. So those are some of my reflections, some of the things that I've seen in my reading, some of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention as a faculty, because we have a serious conversation ahead of us. At this point, I want to turn it over to the group for thoughts, reactions, comments, responses. And so, Dr. Roxana, if you can facilitate from here.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Trimble. I think that set the tone for our discussion. And we would now like to open the floor to whatever comments or queries or question marks that you have in your mind. I see that a lot of you have already actually given some of the comments, and there was actually one question about, can it do maths related questions, or can it, there is any chat sort of AI in maths discipline? And I think Mustafa already responded to that yes, there is. It might be at different stages of development. May I request that as you start, if you want to say something, instead of now writing in the chat, since we are open for a discussion, may you unmute, state your name and department, and please state your comment or query or just anything that you'd like to add. So please start. I do see Maheen had a question. Maheen, can you please unmute? And there's some by the chemistry department. Maheen.
Hello, everyone.
Yes.
So this session has been very helpful. Thank you so much for organizing it. So my question is, actually the question is for the CS people. I have heard that they're in the process of developing some AI trackers. I mean, by any means, if we have anything that can track the content that is generated by AI. For example, we have turned it into check plagiarism, but do we have anything that tracks the AI-related content?
I think if you see our CLT sort of brief, Maheen, we do point out to quite a few trackers for ChatGPT content, but like Turnitin, it has to be interpreted, so it's not 100% proof, 100% perfect. I see that there are quite a few hands that have raised on the screen. Altaf raised hands. Altaf, please unmute and you can sort of give your comments.
Yeah, thank you. Since we talked about it earlier also, Dr. Trimble clearly defined everything that's happening right now. I think there is, as we discussed earlier, there is an ethical issue involved here. One of the basic philosophical issues could be that I refrained from doing something wrong because I didn't have the means to do that. And now I have it. So would I do that? Like, it's a question of integrity. And I think this is a discussion that we need to have with our students and also with ourselves when we when we say that it's a student's issue, I disagree, because even academia is doing, like, plagiarism is not simply a student's domain. Like, look at research articles and everything. So one thing is, I think it's here to stay. It will continue to get stronger, but I think we need a discussion on it, even at school levels, questions of integrity, and also why do we write, basically. So, like, writing is a process which adds to our mental ability to understand things, that, as the term goes, like, it adds to our mind palace. So we become human, more human, through this process. This is one of the basic processes that makes us human. And also, from a practical perspective, I think the best thing would be to use it. Like, as already Dr. Trimble said, that we can give it first, the assignment to the ChatGPT, and then some teachers are doing that. Like, they are offering a ChatGPT and then asking students to criticize it and find faults in it. Like, it's also creating a culture of critical thinking and discourse, which is also very important. So I think it's not simply a question of a tool, but rather also an understanding of the fact that the software of whatever it is an extension of the human mind. So it depends on us to become what it is. So we have to really add to our capacities to make good use of it instead of avoiding it.
Yeah. I think rightfully said that it's an extension of the human mind, and it's not, actually, it does not encompass all of the human dimensions. Perhaps at some later stage, but right now, metacognition and reflection that writing requires perhaps cannot be captured as efficiently. And you were rightfully said that could be used as the next step after the ChatGPT generated text. G. Robin, you came here first with the raised hand. Will you unmute? And we would like to hear your comments. You wrote in the comments that you used it to ask something of students. Please do share.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the platform. I'm Robin Naith from Department of Physics, College side. I'm doing my MPhil from Government College University. And recently, one of my students in the lab, he was talking to me and he introduced ChatGPT with me. He actually demonstrated how we can use it. And at that moment, I was thinking about my assignment that one of my professor has given us. So I asked him, can we ask this question from the material sciences, and can the ChatGPT reproduce the answer or produce the answer? So I would like to share one thing here that may help the teachers or the faculty members while giving assignments to the students. In that particular question, our professor asked us to draw a diagram of that answer as well, and ChatGPT was unable to draw it. So this could be helpful while giving assignments to students, because ChatGPT can only respond in words. It cannot produce pictures or graphs or vectors there. So that might help the teachers while giving assignments to the students. Thank you so much.
Robin, I'm not very sure about, I haven't checked it out, but from the material that I was reading, it does say that there are now AI generated tools that do the images and that do draw. But I haven't checked it myself, so yes, I think we need to check that out.
There is another software developed by the same company, but it only draws pictures like paintings, but it cannot draw the pictures in or the diagrams of physics or like other physical sciences or natural sciences. Sorry.
Okay, I do see that there are some comments.
I have tried.
I'm sorry, taking his comment onward, I would be just suggesting, like, this is the situation of today. Okay, but what about tomorrow, the upcoming days? AI would be able to generate this all, isn't it? I think we need to evolve with it. Honestly, this is my humble suggestion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very rightly put, but I do see, going back to Robin, that there are some comments in the chat where DAL-E is an AI that can produce images. There's a deep AI that produces images and figures. So graphs can be generated on GeoGebra. So I think it's like moving very fast with new things coming up. I'll call upon Derek for now to see what he talks about science and how science could be impacted by it. G.
When I looked into it and I logged into ChatGPT, and then I tried a few answers to some of the assignments that I gave to the students, I thought the results were extremely poor. So I'm not too optimistic. But when I look at the principle behind it, where you go to a place where you actually get information or an answer to a question. I think that has been around for a very long time. Of course, any student could go to a library and load and write down or copy, either by hand or photocopy, an essay about dementia and whatever you wanted. You could find it somewhere. I think the challenge that we have is now it's right there at our fingertips, where we don't need to go to any place anymore, where we can download it at no extreme rate of not. So, and that is obviously the biggest challenge that we have. But I can see a great a challenge that we have trying to negotiate this concept of the library, where students go to gain knowledge and they have a choice. They can obtain that knowledge and make it their own, or they can just copy and paste and do whatever with that information. And we've had that issue all the way along, but the issue obviously has become a bit more refined in the electronic sphere. But the principle behind it, I think, is still the same. I think the analogy with the pocket calculator, I think to me, it's a bit different, because to me, the pocket calculator was solely a tool, or is a tool to achieve an end. Whereas the AI generated, they actually produce the output. They actually produce the product that we are after. And in that sense, I've read quite a few of your articles, and I draw the analogy with the internet. Again, I think the internet is a tool, and whereas ChatGPT and now and all the other products out there, they actually produce the output that we have to deal with.
Yeah, you're right. I did hear that Google search took a dip in earnings because of ChatGPT taking over the place. And you're right, we'll have to be more creative as we move beyond it. And I think, Ghazala, you could talk, if you have your hand raised, if you could tell us about what are some of the other implications that come to your mind. Ji, Ghazala, please unmute yourself.
Okay. Number one, I also wanted to tell you that I gave this to ChatGPT, the question paper that I gave to my intro class, and it generated, the response, and I could identify that this is not something that the student has done. So it's not that we need to put in, like they said, put it in, paraphrase it, and then put it back, and then you can't detect. You can even detect it. You know what you've done in class, and you know what you haven't done. And you can see whether this learning has taken place or it's just been borrowed. I think it's very easy to detect. I don't know why people tend to think it isn't. But anyways, I think I do also want to talk about the fact that we do also need to talk about whether it's fair, right? Whether it's just. I mean, those are very valuable questions. And do we strike a balance between how much we've learned and how much we've just acquired? Because the other thing that I gave my class was, I gave them 5 different definitions, and I said, which one of these do you think is the most appropriate? So that it brings out their critical faculty rather than whether they can generate content.
Yeah. I think, Ghazala, you're talking about what is happening now, but the fear is, if I may use the word fear, or the challenges that ChatGPT just learns, and it learns very quickly. And while we are talking about what is now is discernible to us as instructors, it might become more difficult in the future. Of course, if you know your students, you will always know that this is not what XYZ could have written. I mean, that's the other part of writing, especially. But then I think I see some more hands. So Zamurad, and then Sarah, and then I'll come. Sylvia, you've been there a long time, so perhaps Sylvia, and then of course, Rao. So Zamurad, please.
Okay, thank you so much. I will add into my previous speaker, and interview-based project might solve the problem. That is one thing. Secondly, let's put out ourselves in front of ChatGPT by generating one assignment and ask students to find the gap, what they have not mentioned in it and has been taught in the class, because the assignments are always based on what teacher has taught in the class. So if they will find this gap, they will automatically know that this tool is not going to help them out. Give them those ChatGPT assignments and ask them to fill the gap with the new references, with those references which has not been used by that software. It will add into their information and in their knowledge. So I think that might work well. And in my case, I have been taking Vivas strongly in every my course, by end of my course, in which I ask multiple questions, random questions from the course which has been taught, from the course outline of course. So it automatically shows what they have learned, and have they read those things, were they active in the class or not. So I think these techniques, the teachers who are already doing these things, it's not very big task for them. I agree with the previous participant here. Thank you.
Thank you, Zamurad. I'll move on quickly. We are running out of time, and I would like us as many to talk to it. So over to Sarah, then Sylvia, and then some more. Sarah.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Roxana, when you emailed me, I was supposed to talk about research and ethics, but I think Dr. Trimble and all the speakers have covered that really well. But I quickly wanted to share something that we haven't discussed yet, and that is from a sociological point of view. The way I found out about ChatGPT is that I sent my article for funding to a colleague who I'd been working with for the last 8-9 years. And he quickly messaged me and said, have you done the literature review and the discussion through ChatGPT? So I didn't understand, and I said, no, I haven't. But when I understood, I was very upset and I was very embarrassed. So, you know, this dynamics, and I'm sure people will start researching and writing about it, the trust issue between the supervisor and the student, the instructor and the student, us as researchers and our editors or our colleagues who are reviewing our documents, this trust, our social interaction, it's changing. And it has numerous consequences, some of which are, for example, anxiety, stress, embarrassment. So even if people are not using ChatGPT, the fear will always be there that somebody might suspect it. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, like I said, the human dimension, that's the one that is yet to be captured, and we will have to find ways how to quantify those if we can. Raza, perhaps the legal implications as the legal advisor to the campus.
Thank you, Dr. Sana. First thing, as we know, it's ChatGPT or other AI, they are inevitable. So the only way we can work is to adapt ourselves and learn how to cope with them. A few things which I want to highlight, which, it's not discussed yet. First one is we have to look into our legislation policy and redefine it or look into it. And, that's one area we want to look into. Because ChatGPT says that if you have referred or you're using ChatGPT, then you have to refer it according to them legally that you have taken this material from there. So the other implication, the legal side is that you cannot use it on commercial basis. So if you're using it for examination, you will be given a 0 grade, and we have to look into the plagiarism policy. And for commercial use, if you're using it, that's going to be, infringement of copyrights. Not only ChatGPT, but the third party whose material you're using it for commercial use without taking the permission. So these are the things which I think with the passage of time will evolve, and we will learn it. And the best way is just to adapt and see how we can. And the suggestions, given by the other, participants, especially Dr. Trimble, the assignments, they're really, I think so, it's going to work out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raza. Sylvia, I'm sorry about see your hands. It's a long time, please. G.
No problem. I ask a question to ChatGPT, a simple question: prepare me a cup of coffee. And ChatGPT replied that I cannot prepare you a cup of coffee, but I can give you the instructions on how to prepare a good cup of coffee, and it follow with the complete instructions. So I think the approach that we need to take is more like, instead of being an enemy, we will actually be able to have different assignments and work that it's of a better quality with the support of ChatGPT and many other softwares that I have seen. I've seen on the chat. And for example, Dr. Trimble referred that we cannot put the students sitting in our office and we will check if they are writing their thesis for the research work. So instead of grading just the thesis at the end of the work, we need to look at how much the students are doing throughout the process of completing their research work, not just at the end product. We cannot assess that, as we saw. They can be written through a ChatGPT. So yeah, I'm taking it more of a tool to prepare a good cup of coffee rather than my enemy that will do all the work for the students and they won't learn anything.
Yeah, but the next step, Sylvia, is going to be the Internet of Things, where the ChatGPT is going to be connected to your coffee making machine or tea making machine. And the moment you say, I want a cup of coffee, the directions will go to the Internet of Things. Once the connectivity, your fridge is going to load itself once it finishes. So lots of new things are coming up. I see Kausa, but Aisha, you have had a hand up since a long time. So over to you, and then Kausa, of course, with much regard to listen to.
Hello, everybody. So my take is very much like as Sylvia and Dr. Rao Raza has mentioned that. Because I don't know why we are considering it so much of a threat, because there are more things that are going to come up in this regard. Yes, we need to be prepared about that. But then there are many ways. Our academic writings and our assignments are one part of the assessment that we do. This is not the entire part that we are doing. So there are exams that we are taking that for sure that they need to be in person with us. And one thing that, because I have been using ChatGPT from past few months, so pretty much I have an idea. There are sometimes, if you check it, put it into Turnitin, sometimes it is plagiarized. So you cannot say that it is completely not detectable and you cannot detect it. Sometimes it is. And whenever a student is submitting it, they need to read it through. If you are an intellect person and you need to submit some work, that should be acceptable. If I am taking something from there, so primarily I have to read it, that whether it is up to my standards or not. So this is not entirely possible that you are not going to read it and you are just going to throw it as it is. And if you're going to throw it as it is, where you need to submit it, one way or another way, the person is going to find out that it has been copied.
Mustafa has been asking for a long time. He's unable to raise his hand. So, Kausar, would you mind if I ask Mustafa to go first, and then I'll come to you? G. Mustafa, you wrote to me very early on that you would raise your hand on G.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, and thank you, Dr. Bose. I will quickly go through the things which I have gone through in recently about ChatGPT. First, we don't need to fight it, that for sure. I mean, there is no reason to fight with the ChatGPT. The beauty of the AI is that the most of the questions which were asked in the comment section, if placed in the ChatGPT, they will get the wonderful answers without like all of us or without any expert. The next point is that it's an in-text searching, different from Google's. But the special thing the ChatGPT brings is that creating new content out of simple topics and simple titles you are giving to them. They can create abstracts and they can create storylines. They can create the things you need to do, the study design, and a lot more in science and research. And also, it is considered as like a very special stuff by scientific community. Since it was like in the opinion sections of Nature and Science and all in the 4Bs as well. So that means this is something really relevant for academia and for science and research. And one more thing for plagiarism, another question I would quickly like to answer is that if you ask ChatGPT about the simple established facts, still it is able to produce like a good quality content. I mean, for example, the glycolysis is a very simple fact about life sciences topic. For introductory biology section, everything is established about glycolysis, but still the ChatGPT can produce a document. It has 18% similarity. And if you just say novel or something new or like more recent, it can create like unique sort of documents. And in order to address with the students' assignment, we can, I mean, quickly, I just list the points I have raised. We can think about specific and class specific activities. We can stick with those things. We can stay most recent because ChatGPT is not able to deal with the things where we are doing like in the last couple of years. We can use in-text citation to confirm whether the student is actually writing the sentence according to that statement. And of course, we can run the ChatGPT assignment first and give the student that this is what I have already done for you guys. So just go ahead from here on. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Mustafa. And I would hate to have you as a student in my class. Jeev Kausar, over to you. Please unmute yourself. And then, of course, Rao and Abdullah.
Thank you. I don't have much to say because lots of things have already been said. But I have been checking out this ChatGPT for the last 7-8 days now, you see, and trying to do everything, you know, to find out whether how knowledgeable this ChatGPT is, you see, you know. I mean, it is okay if you are going to write an essay or something, you know, but if you are going to write some scientific piece of work or something, you know, it hardly meets your requirement, you see. I mean, if you want it to have some references as well, so it will go for 2 or 3 references and no more, you see, you know.
Yeah.
And but on the other hand, I mean, overall, we should not view it as something very negative, you see. I mean, it is a continuation of all the things that we already have been doing, you see. You know, for example, starting from, you know, I mean, spell check and Grammarly and all these simple things. And if you go on to Google, I mean, that has got immense capabilities as well, you see. I mean, for having more information, you have Wikipedia, which is very generally used by all students, you see, and so on and so forth. The things that Dr. Trimble had mentioned in his talk are extremely important. I would like to highlight those, and those were the things that I already had been thinking, you see. Now our mode of evaluation has to change, you see, you know, and then we must emphasize more on the oral examinations, you see, on Viva Voce, you see, that we have been doing, but it is very time consuming, but somehow we have to use those things in our evaluation. On the other hand, I would also like to inform all of you, and I'm sure all of you are aware, that the ChatGPT is much more used in non-academic areas, you see, in industry, in commerce and all that. You see, the other day, I had you know, one of my colleagues from US had come. he's with the computer sciences, computer engineering also. I asked him that, are you aware of ChatGPT? He said, what are you talking about? We have been using it for such a long time and we use it everywhere, you see, for making ads or making something, we give it and then that is being done, you see. So obviously the power of this technology, and it is going to evolve. And there are so many more like Quillbot and Deep AI and all that, you see, it will all be coming. And so we have to be alert. Yeah. But we should not be afraid of all these. We should adopt them according to our own environments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kausar. Well made points. May I request first Abdullah to sort of say from CPPG, and then of course to Rao for the last word before I request Dr. Trimble to do a recap of the session. Ji Abdullah.
Thank you, Dr. Rukhsana. I have been using this application for a long time. The last thing I requested this chat GPT, tell me a joke. So he also is a joker. He shares the joke. But
she has to be a better joker. It's just not a
whatever. But at the same time, he is a damn liar. It is a damn liar. And, I asked him, please provide profile of Dr. Abdullah Khoso, assistant professor at CPPG. He did provide, but the wrong information. And the same thing I requested for Dr. Professor Saeed, and he did the same mistakes. And the most of the details he provided were incorrect. So that's why I believe that it is a big liar. And interesting thing is that this is easier to understand the students' ability. Of course, I'm supporting the previous statements and the narrative of my colleagues, that it is a very easier to understand the ability of the students to write to the extent where we can gauge the student has been able to produce from his or her own from mind or something which is created from something else. So of course it is easier to catch them, and GPT is this application is nothing. I think it will be one day completely controlled by us. Thank you.
Oh, Abdullah, just a small tip. If you have to make a friend, do not doubt his capabilities. So just wait and see, perhaps a bit too early, some of the words that you've spoken. Ji Rao.
Thank you, Dr. Rukhsana. I just want to, add what Dr. Abdullah, Sylvia, and Dr. Sara has mentioned. These social implications in future, that's something alarming. For example, like 2 decades back, there used to be one television in a house and everyone used to sit together as a family and watch television. Now, everyone has their own screen in their rooms. Now, everyone is having their cell phones. Now, just imagine a situation where you have your own AI friends where they know you and they can adapt according to you, and you just talk to them. And that's going to be something which we need to be looking into as well. Something which I really think that, you can ask for a joke, you can ask for other advice, personal advice or anything. There's going to be an answer over there, and a person who is a good listener and listening to everything what you are saying and advising you on the grounds of logic. So that's an area where I think so as an institution we should be looking as well. How students are going to adapt and evolve with such an AI in their lives. Thank you.
What you talked about, Raza, is I read a book in 1971 by Riesman. I think he was a social anthropologist. And he talked about the cultural lag that will happen as technology advances. And that was way back. And what you said falls right under that. Unfortunately, we as a human race have not been able to keep pace with the changes in technology and all the implications it brings. And that is a challenge. We had at some point I think 5 participants. Many of them have left because of the 2 p.m. class, but we will definitely have the recording and a remarkable amount of information in the chat, which we'll try to put it together in a format that all of us can use as resources, perhaps add it to our brief. And so it becomes very comprehensive. Thank you so much for all of those who have made those comments in the chat and given great information. Asher was one, and I saw quite a few others. May I, Dr. Trimble, request you to sort of recap the discussion before we wind up?
Sure. I found this discussion to be very helpful, and I hope that it has been useful to everyone. We talked about ChatGPT demonstrating its use, talking about some of the limitations to it, some of its advantages, some of the ways that it can be used for cheating purposes by our students. But then there was a lot of optimism in terms of what the future looks like, how we can adapt, how we can use assignments effectively to assess our students' knowledge without, but I think that adapting to it is really the key. Knowing what it can do and how it can be used for teaching, for assessment as well. And I just want to express my appreciation to you, Dr. Oksana, for putting together a very helpful brief that has excellent links in it for those who want to explore some more. Please do that. It's a very well organized and useful brief. And so to everyone, thank you for participating. I saw 211 at the maximum that I noticed.
Yes.
And so that I just think it highlights the importance to our community to have these sorts of conversations. And for those who want to continue this conversation, I think it's important that not that we want to, but we have to continue this conversation. And if you have ideas on where we can go, please do communicate them to Dr. Oksana so she can include additional programming in the CLT on how we can adapt and use this in very responsive ways. So thank you everyone for participating in today's conversation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Trimble. And I do see Musarat over there. Musarat, I thought from the Writing Center, just officially the session has closed. And I just thought, a small, because Musarat, you are most affected by the ChatGPT. And at some point you had your hand raised, then you put it down. And I wondered if you would like to add to some of us who are still here.
Thank you, Dr. Oksana. Yes, actually, as you mentioned ChatGPT to me, we had already thought about giving this as an essay topic, and I've sent you the topic or the prompt that we will be giving out to our students, especially freshmen. I think that what Dr. Trimble said is spot on. What Sarah Jaffrey said, I think that is very important for us, ethically, the ethics and the how this affects us as people, citizens, and responsible citizens. So, and ChatGPT also says that you have to mention or you have to give a citation if you've used it. And I wonder if the students will. But it is a good idea to start with ChatGPT, give the assignment and then say, where are the gaps? And then I'm sure that, teaching concepts. So it is urging teachers to teach concepts rather than being hung with or hooked with the content. So I feel that, and we did 2 seminars for the political science section, 3 sections where reflective essay was being, so the teacher wanted the students to write reflective essays based on 3 seminars. So I think assignments like these, I don't think can use ChatGPT effectively. So I do think that this was a very, very timely session for something like this that's started. And thank you very much.
Thank you. We are open for anybody else who would like to make some informal comments, and we'd like to sort of capture them in the chat so that, or in our brief, the video recording, so that we lose nothing as we move out. Anthony, you would like to add something, or as an academic leader of the campus?
Well, I think we're just looking at the absolute tip of the iceberg here. We already have Google putting 10 billion into OpenAI, and the total commitment over the last 15 days has been 25 billion into this technology. So what we are, it will do everything beyond our imagination. So we keep that in mind.
Yeah. So it's going to baffle us yet again and again and again. If there are no more comments, maybe thank you immensely, and Dr. Trimble for pushing me to do it. I really thank you for this timely session. And there are lots of your comments in the chat, which are extremely helpful. And we'll make sure that we pad our CLT brief with these comments if we have missed any. Thank you so much again, and goodbye.
And
Next time.
And I'll make sure that the slides are available for everyone as well.
Yes, please, Dr. Trimble. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.